Hey guys, it's Malady
and Haley,
and we're back with another episode of
Crash Course.
Crash Course. And for this week, we're going to be talking about the As You Like It by
William Shakespeare.
In this scene, Rosalind and Orlando meet each other at the match.
In this scene, Orlando and Charles battle each other, but Orlando wins the fight.
Adam warns Orlando that his brother is after him. Duke Frederick banishes Rosalind, and out of loyalty, Celia goes with her. Rosalind as Ganymede, Celia as Aliena, and their loyal fool Touchstone go to the forest. Celia finds Orlando's love poetry and shows Rosalind and Touchstone. Rosalind is very excited. Orlando stumbles upon Duke Frederick's camp, but being a wise ruler, he lets him in for food and shelter. Rosalind and Orlando stumble upon each other for the first time. Oliver enters the forest and falls asleep. Seeing a tiger about to prance on him, his brother Orlando chooses to save his brother and, in the end, forgives him. Oliver shows a bloodied hanky to Rosalind and Celia, and as a result, she faints, giving away the secret. With this, all of their lovers are matched with their loves. Rosalind and Orlando, Celia and Oliver, Touchstone and Audrey, and Phoebe and Sylvius. With this, let's get on to the video. So talking about As You Like It, the first thing that we're going to be talking about is themes. So, one theme that is very present throughout the novel is city life versus country life. Okay, yeah, they're like polar opposites, right? Well, in common days in the 21st century, there are popular stereotypes related with city and country. But in the book, city is related to the kingdom and country is related to the Forest of Arden, as you can see. But these stereotypes aren't exactly what Shakespeare was meant for when he was writing the play, or it was mainly he's illustrating the balance between the two. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of important because in the play, one does not exist without the other, right? So Lots of noble people go into the Forest of Arden and they have like a break. So it's kind of symbolized the symbol of like heaven, and that relating to the country life at the Forest of Arden is spoken on like various points on the play. And it's comparable, and actually Charles in Act 1, he says that it's comparable to the golden world of Greek mythology. Mm-hmm. But then the presence of the play is when our beloved lovesick are frolicking around with their lovers, and then they're eventually paired up with each other. And everyone is like forgiven who was wrongly banished, or forgiven in the, they all go out of the city life to return to civic duty after they're married, and they're all like having a nice time. And Shakespeare he meant that in this realm, that city and country life are interchangeable and they cannot exist without the other.
So the second thing we're going to talk about is transformation and disguise. So As You Like It has a really big theme of transformation, especially when it's concerning the Forest of Arden. Very specifically, we can talk about Rosalind becoming Ganymede. We can talk about Celia becoming Aliena. And we can talk about Duke Sr. not being a duke anymore. And Duke Frederick leaving the life in his kingdom to become a monk. And this whole transformation and disguise is something that Shakespeare really uses throughout all of his plays, not only concerning physical changes, but also just when characters fall in love, they change. When the characters fall in love with each other, they tend to change in Shakespeare plays. And that's just a really big theme in this, not only with them physically changing, but also with them changing religions and falling in love and changing what they believe in because of that.
Mm-hmm. And Rosalind is a big example of that, because she changed from a woman to a man. And then when she meets Orlando, it's just she finds her feminine qualities and whatnot. So the third thing we're going to be talking about is the malleability of the human experience. I know, fancy words, just meaning that people just changed, kind of relating to how that Rosalind became Celia, and Rosalind became Ganymede, and Celia became Aliena. But the malleability means that people change. It could be for the better or for worse. And in Rosaline's case, you can see that it was like an iffy character. She might have been the heroine of the story, but she was kind of manipulative. And here's why. So she was in the disguise of Ganymede throughout this play, right? Mm-hmm. And then she shows that the malleability of the human experience as her disguise as a man, and she's showing how Shakespeare wanted to show that by showing how men and women are easily like vulnerable to change, because she changes into some of those qualities, right? Mm-hmm. And then she also, in a manipulative way, she also toys with Orlando's emotion as they play like that acting game where she's also having the disguise of Ganymede, but then she's pretending to be herself, and then Orlando's just like, what? And then that whole thing happens. And then it's kind of confusing, but keep up. And then she also tricks Phoebe into marrying Sylvius, but that's kind of like confusing throughout the play, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're the professionals, but even that kind of stuffs up. But then one part that Jacques says actually illustrates this, which is the 7 stages of man.
So the first stage is puking infant.
Puking infant. This is just like a whining baby. The mom's kind of like distressed, and the baby's just puking.
Go.
The second stage is whining schoolboy.
Whining schoolboy is something that we all have seen and can relate to, right? So if this boy is just like doesn't want to go to school, he doesn't want to do any work, but he has to.
The next stage is lover.
Lover is something that we all had dreamed to hope, but this person is just drunk on his love, right? So, but this is present throughout the play.
The next stage is soldier.
Soldier, okay, so this is the man that went to fight for his country, and he fights for his love, and yeah.
The next stage is a justice of an outstanding leader.
Yeah, fancy words just meaning that he follows the rules now, and he's proper.
The next stage is skinny and silly old man.
Yeah, so this is the old man that's old, but he still pretends that he's young. In this case, he's getting drunk. Usually that's associated with young people, right?
The last stage is very old man.
So this very old man is like, he's half dead. Yep. And this is our character's end. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is the delights of love. Woo! Love is like present all throughout the play, right?
Yes.
And then but this is Shakespeare. It's kind of has this dark undertone to it, because the thing is, Shakespeare wanted this love is present throughout his plays, and it's of course the case in As You Like It, right? Mm-hmm. And Shakespeare has like, we really don't know like his main standpoint on love and marriage, and he might be warning us, he might be saying that love is overrated, so it's just depending on what you want to take out of it. But in this case, he could be talking about that the dudes are masters, they're slaves to their lovers.
Yes.
But in this case, because Rosaline is Ganymede, and then so she kind of takes control. And you can see kind of like the feminist standpoint from this play because of Rosaline being a man, and then she's kind of like manipulating, as we see in the malleability of the human experience, manipulating Orlando and her love to what she wants it to be. She wants to prove to herself that Orlando's worthy enough, like he's ready enough to be her lover and to have a life together.
Mm-hmm. So the next thing we're going to talk about is symbols.
The one
That
time.
was the bad.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is symbols. So the first symbol we're going to talk about is heaven versus hell. So heaven versus hell is a really important symbol because during Shakespeare's time, Christianity played a huge role. So heaven represents the Forest of Arden, and hell represents the kingdom. He used that in his play, and it was really significant because during his time, Christianity was really, really important. And
we'll elaborate on that when we get to religion.
yes, and when Duke Senior was exiled, Duke Frederick sees exiling him, like he's exiling him to hell. But Duke Senior finds the forest to be more of a heaven. He finds it to be very nice. He finds it to be like feel more free. So then when Duke Frederick finds out that he's actually the one that's living in hell, that he's actually stuck in the kingdom, then he becomes really angry and he decides to take over the heaven.
Yeah, because he was like, I banished the people into the Forest of Arden because it was punishment. And we don't know exactly why, because he might have been jealous or...
Yeah, we don't know why they were sent there, but we know that they were. And when he finds out that he's actually the one being punished by still being in the kingdom, he's like, oh, I gotta go take over the forest then. So when Duke Frederick eventually reaches the forest, he meets a priest. And this priest, and he has like a spiritual awakening, and that leads him to stop his attack and become a monk.
Yep.
Now, this priest can represent God in this story as the person that is protecting the heavens and keeping the people from hell out, and only letting the people who are worthy into heaven. And that's how heaven versus hell.
Yes, but the thing is, that's going to be interchangeable because the good ones, they all go back to civic duty in the hell.
Yes.
But they kind of like transform that. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the next symbol that we're going to be talking about is slain deer. So the slain deer symbolizes many things, right? So we got our little deer here. So it symbolizes many things. So the slaying of deer is portrayed a lot, but it wasn't for like so long, right? It was like few times, and it was mostly with the Duke Frederick, Duke Senior in his forest and with his men, right? And it could symbolize the power in shorter terms. And the killing deer was considered like a victorious act because it showed strength, and killing often gave you respect. This is in the time that they thought that king was like masculine and it was like strength and everything, right? And then the thing was like the Jacques, which is the head man for Duke Senior, the right-hand man for Duke Senior, he didn't like this idea of slaying deers because he said that he witnessed an upset deer, like in pain, in suffering, and he didn't like it. He says a line in the play that shows that his dislike for this slaying of deer and hunting of deer. And then Jacques actually kneels for the First Lord because killings were used to make you seem like you royalty, right? And then a song was sang in that time for like killing deer, blah 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 blah. And then it said there was like a memorable experience, so that's why they sing the song. And then, but the interesting thing was that it was never said again if the deer was used for food or as a trophy, because that was also common in that day.
So the next symbol we're going to talk about is the rose. So, Rosalind can be broken down to rose, which Shakespeare cleverly used to represent her multiple times in the play. So the first time a rose is seen is when Celia gives her a rose to cheer Rosalind up, and that can symbolize that Rosalind is very cheerful and is very supportive. And the next time you see it is when Touchstone is making fun of Orlando, and he says, "He, the sweetest rose will find, must find love's prick in Rosalind." This is not only a direct reference to Rosalind herself, but the prick is also a hint to Orlando that Rosalind is actually dressed as a man.
Yep. Okay, so the next symbol we're going to be talking about is the names. So that's Ganymede and Aliena, right? So they change. Like right now, this symbolizes her being Aliena, and this symbolizes her being Rosaline but Ganymede, right? And now I am a princess. Yes, I like to be a princess. But then, so Rosaline's choice of identity is very significant, right? Ganymede, it symbolizes because Ganymede was a prince of Troy who was extremely beautiful, who was extremely handsome, and that later was kidnapped Jove, who was the god of love and marriage, to be a cupbearer. And these people serve wine. This is like the mythology present in this play. And this name was actually symbolizes how Orlando tries to woo Ganymede, which is secretly Rosaline, right? Mm-hmm. And then Phoebe also falls in love with Ganymede as Rosaline. It's like so confusing, but like at this point you should have catched up. And then Celia's choice of disguise was also significant too, because Aliena means the estranged one, and this relates to how Celia runs away from her father's kingdom to be with Rosaline out of loyalty. This is also the two different kind of like people that got exiled, and either by force or by loyalty and to the people that got exiled. So the next thing we're going to be talking about is motifs. And the first motif we're going to be starting on is exile. Okay. Banishment. So the play literally starts out with Duke Frederick like wallowing in his job well done of exiling the rightful heir to the throne, Duke Senior, right? And we all know that he ends up in the Forest of Arden and then this whole heaven and hell thing and blah 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 blah. We covered that already. But for what reason though? Like we were so confused about that. Only he knows. Like because he might have been jealous, he might have been angry. We don't really know. So there's like throughout the story, there's two types of banished folk, right? I briefly touched upon that in the last symbol, but I'm going to elaborate on that. So either the one of the banished folk are the ones forcibly removed. These are Duke Senior, Rosaline, and Orlando, right? Those are forcibly removed. They're forced to get away from the kingdom into the Forest of Arden. The second one are the ones that left out of loyalty and righteousness, which is the Duke's Lord, Celia, and Adam, right? Those are loyal people that left with their forcibly removed loved ones to help them like cope with their exile. And now the marriages. So these marriages, like all of the four plus marriages, just joking. There were only 4 at the end, but I mean, who knows? People were just like getting married all over the place. This is like the celebration of joining of the members of one community, whether this be the Forest of Arden or the French duchy, right? The French government. This same community is like singing and dancing at the end of the play, but the same community is due to go back to the dukedom to be ruled and govern the entire government, right? And the significance to this Shakespeare is because that at the end of the play, everyone is celebrating. Whether they are poor, whether they're rich, whether they're wealthy, whether they're in poverty, they could be happy, they could be sad, but in the end, everyone is happy, right? And this is the fact of Shakespeare comedy because they always end happily ever after. This is different from his tragedies. And they are mingling in the same community, the same the same like gathering, the same community that they always been through one another, like different scenarios. And this shows that Shakespeare shows that from this that the wrongs can be righted and wounds can be healed.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is religion. So religion plays a huge role in this play because during the Renaissance, Christianity was very important to people. It was one of the things they definitely identified with. And that's seen a lot throughout this play when they talk about, they just bring up Christianity a lot. They talk about like they're blessed and things like that. And that also relates to a lot of the things I talk about when I talked about heaven versus hell. And
the God is like referred to a lot, and the people like in the name of God or God let the like something defy me or something like that. Like it's appeared a lot throughout Shakespeare's play.
And
right?
Duke Frederick used it a lot as his excuse for exiling everyone. Like, well, it's God's will that they are exiled. And then when he comes to attack them, he realizes that he was wrong and he gives up his life to God, kind of like as like, I'm sorry for exiling them. Like, I'm devoting my life to you now. And so everyone gets to go back. And that's how religion plays a huge role.
Yeah, and then it relates to how Shakespeare might have also been Christian, so he might have incorporated that aspect into his plays. So the next motif that we're going to be talking about is
love and rivalry.
Yes, love and rivalry. This is present throughout the play a lot, and it's a source of lots of hatred and sadness and even love, right? So since the main topic of this comedy, there's lots of love and rivalry between families, and this is love and rivalry between like families or people is common throughout like Shakespeare's lots of his plays, comedies, whether it be comedies or tragedies. And love has a big significance, right? And then all of the characters' goal is to find that right one. And Shakespeare also has these theories of like if love is real or is love worth it, or like should people be more careful? And that's things that we should like elaborate on, right? That's the things that we should think about. And characters, an example for As You Like It, Oliver at the end of the book falls in love like hopelessly with Celia, not even like recognizing who she is, or like really not even having a proper conversation with her, right? And then so he falls in love, and then that in their conversation, in Orlando and Oliver's conversation, Orlando like questioned him like, are you sure like you're in love, like what? But this is contradictory because because the thing is this is hypocritical of Orlando to say, because Orlando fell in love with Rosaline after one meeting at his fight, right? So it's just like, who is he to question his brother's love? But it's kind of like like controversial because it's just like, why did you fall in love like meeting her once, not even talking to her properly? So it's just like, maybe it was just like, everyone else is getting married, so how about we all get married too? Woo! So he questions his brother's affection. And then, but this is also a main thing of acting on impulse, right? So everyone just acts on impulse. Everyone just does what they want to do without even like questioning it, without even considering the consequences of it, what might happen to everybody else. And then at the end, just like the brothers they didn't get along with each other, but then they get over it, and then they all live happily ever after. And also because the love and rivalry is seen between Orlando and Oliver, and at the very beginning of the play, the brothers don't get along, and they go like head to toe. They didn't get along. Orlando like tries to like strangles him, Oliver, and then because Oliver was very selfish, and they didn't get along with each other, and this was like love and rivalry there was rivalry between the family members, but they eventually got over it, and they got their women, and they all lived like happily ever after.
The last thing we're going to talk about is literary devices. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the significance of the title. So during the play, at the end of the play, Rosalind steps on stage and says, "To like as much as I charge you to like as much of this play as please you." In other words, you can just take it or you can leave it. You can love it or you can hate it. Shakespeare kind of just takes as you like it. Like, you can take whatever you want from this play. Like, you can, like, some people saw it as like the fluidity of gender, and other people saw it as same-sex desires. Other people just saw it as like, just love whoever you want, don't even think about it, just love them, don't think of the consequences. So you can take what you want away from the play, and there's no right or wrong way to take this play. It's kind of what he's trying to say with as you like it. You get to take whatever you want from this, whatever you think is okay. Kind of like he's talking about, like, there's no right or wrong way to love someone or look at the world. And
it's just like there's different perspectives, and it all depends on like the person and what they want out of it, what they like think out of like one specific thing. And that's important to like realize in the modern day. There's so much conflict, there's so much things going on in the world, that it's important to take a step back and see, okay, there could be another perspective that I could see something in, and be acceptance of something. So this is like, it's representative of Shakespeare, like really thinking outside of the box, thinking of what his audience might feel, their attachment to this book, what they take out of the book, right?
And he doesn't just want them to take something away from just the exact play, but just by naming the play as you like it, he wants people to be able to think about the name and take something from that too.
Yes. Okay, so the second literary device that we're going to be talking about is the overwhelming presence of cliches. So like cliches is present a lot in like the 21st century, right? Everyone's just like, oh, that's so cliche, or like that specific scenario is so cliche, or like that it's typically like associated with love, right? And actually it's like, you can see that it's like Shakespeare who came up with this thing of cliches of love, right? There could be cliches of something else. And he also, like, we all know that he gave birth to some of like the most famous quotes or sayings or phrases of this century and the last. Like, everyone uses them a lot. It's so like it's like everyone's repeating them a lot. It's so outstanding, right? And then it's one of these main cliches that's present throughout this play is like everyone falling in love in an instant, not really thinking of anything, about everyone just like wooing each other just nonstop, and it's just like everything's going everything's love. It's just like the play is drowning in love.
And like when someone like falls in love with someone really fast, they just say, "Wow, you're such a cliche. Like you're so typical," kind of thing. And he really created that sense of a cliche from this play.
Yeah.
Action.
So the last literary device we're going to talk about is mood and tone. So William Shakespeare has always been very amazed by how women's minds work. And most of his plays, women are seen as more positive people, and the men are usually the one doing things wrong in most cases, or it's the men that kind of like make them do the things wrong. And when Rosalind disguises herself as Ganymede, Orlando does not recognize that it is her, which Shakespeare might be trying to explain how men are unobservant and blind to the things around them when they are in love. How love blinds you, and that how you just love God, what am I talking about? Hold on. No, it's fine. Shakespeare tries to show us how our behavior changes depending on people we are with and the situation present.
Action.
So guys, this is sad. Our film has come to an end.
Yes, thank you guys for watching, and shout out to our background actor, Sonika.
And Jade, our filmer director. And
We
we'll
will
see you guys next week. Bye!
Bye! The next stage is Soldier.
Soldier, so he's going to fight in the war, and he... Haley, you have to move. You have to go that way.
I thought we were waiting until she was like, behind us.
We move after. We move after so Haley can see.
Like, that could be a clue to the fact that Rosalind takes